The House Committee on Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Pohutsky. Here. Representatives Hill.
Here.
Shannon.
Present.
Arbit.
Present.
McFall.
Here.
Pies.
Present.
Martin. Preston.
Here.
Shriver.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 8 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Representative Arbit moves to approve the minutes from our previous meeting on May 18th. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. So to start off, we are going to be taking up Senate Bill 52, which is sponsored by Senator Cherry. For testimony only today, I would like to invite up Katie Olkowski from his office to speak to the bill. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for taking up this bill today. We're really happy to be here. Unfortunately, Senator Cherry is stuck in session for the Memorial Day ceremony today, so I will be filling in the role today. Before we get into the meat of Senate Bill 52, I would like to provide some background as to kind of the scenario for how we got here. In previous years, the DNR has sent out mail surveys for deer harvest quotas and numbers to hunters during the season to gather any of the harvest data to make regulatory decisions. And in the past few years, we've seen a decline in the respondents to those surveys, which has led to a deficiency in the data for any of the harvest data that's been available. In 2022, the Natural Resources Commission instituted a new requirement to have hunters report their deer harvest within 72 hours of their initial harvest to basically get better data and make sure they could better make their management decisions with that data. And according to that requirement, there's a penalty for any violation of it that is currently a misdemeanor, and that is a potentially a 90-day sentence in jail or up to a fine of between $50 and $500 or both. Originally, this penalty came about because whenever you make any regulation changes in NAREPA or WACO, it's automatically deemed a misdemeanor, and it's only through statutory change that we can effectively modify the penalty, and that's what Senate Bill 52 seeks to do. In the section of the statute, we basically shift the violation, which is reporting a deer harvest or retaining the deer harvest confirmation number, to the exception section that details where the regulation sits, and modifies it to be a civil infraction with a max fine of no more than $150. Basically, what we're just seeking to do is to decriminalize the failure to report the harvest and make the violation and the penalty more appropriate to the actual charge, especially since there's no actual damage to the resource that's being done as a result of, not reporting the harvest data.
Again, hi, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Taylor Ritterbusch, Legislative Liaison for the DNR. Thank you for your time today, and we'd like to thank Senator Cherry and his office for bringing this forward. We came very close to getting this across the finish line last session to make this correction, and we're happy to see it back here before you again today. As Katie had outlined, this is a pretty simple change that needed to be done in statute. And I also have our Assistant Chief of our Law Enforcement Division, Lieutenant Brandon Keefe, with me today, who will be happy to answer any questions and can speak to how our education around this topic went through the first deer season. So I think with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Again, we are just happy to see that this is moving in the direction of a decriminalization, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Rep. McFall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a quick question. So we're having trouble getting the data from the hunters? Is that what the primary thing? And so why are they allowed to get another license the following year if they haven't reported what they did the previous year?
So yes, that's correct. Historically, we had mailed out those surveys that went out post-hunting season, and that's when, and those were totally voluntary. You get it in the mail, you'd fill it out, you'd mail it back. And so being that those were voluntary, we saw those responses declining. So if we look back, dating back to, early 2000s, we were about a 75% response rate. In 2021, we were just hovering around 27%. So that was what we were trying to adjust for, is that we were not getting that data back. And, we hear from all different corners of the state, well, what's the deer population? Is it too high? Is it too low? And if we're not getting good data, it's really hard to answer those management questions.
Those surveys were also not to every hunter. So as far as licensing goes, it was on a case-by-case basis. They mailed a certain amount of them each year, but not every hunter received them. So it wasn't something that we would suspend a hunting privilege for.
Representative Pies?
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little concerned that in the stats you gave us, it said 83% of hunters reported completing the harvest report in under 5 minutes. So I'm wondering what their difficulty is in getting the information to you. And what is a deterrent? I mean, I understand that you think the misdemeanor is too harsh, but unless they're going to pay $1,000 for their civil infraction, I don't understand what any ramifications are of them just not reporting, continuing to not report.
Sure, I think I follow your question there. So just to note, I think that was a handout from MUCC, though it is data that was given to them from the DNR. And I think that was supposed to illustrate that, almost, 83% of folks are able to do it really quickly and effectively. And so where the other 17% are at are likely in, calling it in and doing it over the phone, or, maybe they started it and stopped. This was just based on the data that we were able to gather off of how much time they were spending on our website. So that's just basically that metadata that's tracking. And so essentially the fine of up to $150 would be for that failure to report within 72 hours of harvesting a deer.
If they can do it by phone, then I would think if they can do it by phone, it seems pretty easy then. So it seems to me that just having just a civil infraction just says, kind of like, what the hell, why should I go bother with the phone call even?
Sure. Well, I think for a lot of folks that are participating in hunting around the state in the far regions of the UP and northern Michigan where they might not have cell service, we want to give them an opportunity to get to service, to have that phone call made to another person. So if I shoot a deer, I can have Lieutenant Keefe report it for me if I give him the information to report it online. So that could be some of the instances as why that's not happening immediately. But again, we think that if you're going to fail to report, there are likely other violations that are going to be happening with that probably would carry higher fines. Poaching, let's say. If someone were to poach a deer, we would go after them for that, not for their failure to report a deer harvest.
Madam Chair, one more, please. How many people were charged with a misdemeanor last year?
So we're not aware of anyone that we issue. We had we publicized a very educational approach to this regulation in the first year. We do that quite often with regulation changes anyways. So we publicized a very educational approach and kind of put it out there that we're just looking for your help in gaining the data. And so with a high percentage rate of people who successfully harvest reported, even knowing that it was going to be an educational year, we thought that was a very big win anyways.
And just real quick, I know you mentioned that the reporting process changed last legislative term because of the legislation we passed. It might be helpful if you just talk about some of those changes and how it impacted reporting numbers or anything like that, if we know that, I guess.
So I don't think we have, since it was all voluntary previously, I don't think we can really compare the two, but I do have some numbers in terms of, I think we had talked about the 83% within 5 minutes. 86% of them were submitted via the internet. 83 were on smartphones. And then I had another number here, and not seeing it now. Oh, here we go. 303,000 reported harvests. So that seems to be about on par with what we had seen based on the estimates from the paper mail-in surveys. But having this data, we're also being able to look at it on a day-by-day basis. So we can see that about 15% of the total harvest happened on opening day of firearm season. And we can get into some of those metrics to understand how hunters are, where they're hunting, when they're hunting, those types of things, so we can adjust the regulations to that.
Thank you. Representative Preston?
Thank you. I applaud you guys for rolling this out. I think the data collection is a great component, but the people that are engaging in deer hunting, it's an aging population. There's not a lot of younger hunters coming into the market. We're trying to draw them in. I understand the need for the data collection, but one of the approaches that I don't understand why it was never looked at is possibly incentivizing compliance, to report instead of attaching a punitive aspect to it. There are so many tools that the DNR has in their toolbox to incentivize, whether it be an ORV sticker or an ORV. There's different layers of permits and activities in your arsenal of things to do to incentivize this activity instead of doing it in a punitive approach, report or else. That's just one aspect I was curious of. But again, I do applaud you for decriminalizing it. I'm an active deer hunter, so is my daughter. We had to go 18 miles so that she could report at the top of a hill with her cell phone. So connectivity is a big issue for a lot of us up in the UP. So just some thoughts on that.
Great, thank you, Representative, and appreciate your support of the concept here of collecting that data. I think when the department was developing this, we have all sorts of very talented biologists that are thinking about how can we get the best data to manage this resource. And I'm assuming when that was pulled together, there was probably much more thought given to how do we get the data that we're looking for than is it punitive or is there an incentive? And unfortunately, based on the way that the law is set up, it defaults to that misdemeanor. But I don't think that there was ever an intention from the department to go, we're going to implement this new regulation and therefore now we can write these tickets. I mean, it's really focused on trying to get that data. And so we probably should have tried to address this earlier, but that's why we're here today and appreciate your support.
And I guess all I would ask for in the future is maybe just a thought on the incentivizing of reporting, because I think you guys all know, all of us that partake in deer hunting, we want, I've got 8s or better on my land, plain and simple. 8s or better outside the ears. So we're all really engaging in best practices to try to maximize, what we do in our sandbox. And incentivizing these things encourages people, that are really engaged and active in making the deer herd and incentivizing youth to come in and partake in the sport. So,
Thank you.
Rep. Pies?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Preston saying his daughter had to go to the top of a hill to report something made me think that perhaps I misunderstood something. So when this flyer here says 83% of hunters reported completing the harvest report in under 5 minutes, I think that means that's how long it took to fill out the form, not that you have to do it immediately? Oh, okay, so it was actually a matter of cell service, because it sounded like she shot the deer, then had to go quick to the hill to report something. Okay, thank you.
Lots of suburbanites learning about hunting today is basically what we're learning here. Representative Shriver.
I'm a suburbanite myself, and I'm not a hunter. I have great respect for all hunters, though. I'm just wondering why failure to report a deer harvest is equivalent to a speeding ticket. Like, why is there a fine in general?
I think if we don't get any data, it's going to be very difficult to manage the resource. So I do agree with the option of looking at incentivizing in the future, but I think we modeled it very similar to other states who already had a model in place that was working in those other states. And so it was a matter of trying to find what was working and utilize it in Michigan so that we could get the appropriate data so we could continue to get people in the woods and move forward from there. I don't know that there was such a focus on the fine structure itself as far as a speeding ticket. The difference between a safety factor, I think, like Taylor mentioned earlier, it was important for us to recognize that there's not an abuse of the resource going on, so it shouldn't be a misdemeanor violation, but that a civil infraction would be definitely more appropriate in that situation.
Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you. And maybe we can all go out sometime, my Democratic colleagues, and I can give you some lessons here on how all this works. Happy to do that. It is a wonderful way to be out on the land, and it's a wonderful way to interact with the incredible environment of Michigan, and to the point of needing the data, I think that's absolutely fundamental. There's a lot of concern. The white-tailed deer population in the Upper Peninsula, in particular, sort of is at the edge of its range and at the edge of its habitat, and so the number question is one that is somewhat fraught conversation at different times. I'm aware of that. Especially when the further north you get in the UP, where deer would live normally and where they wouldn't live is a question that different folks are, and so having really, really good data is a good idea. I'm going to put my sort of local government hat on here, though, on this question of incentives. We don't do necessarily, that I understand it, incentives for fish licenses, and we don't do I think I am, and so I wanted to contrast that, the having a penalty for not reporting I think that's an adequate incentive that doesn't therefore penalize making sure we have enough money to actually take care of the resource. It is the licenses we sell are critical for having the funding to maintain habitat. So sorry, so I'm trying to say, the reason, if we have incentives, then we'd be giving away the money that we're using to maintain the habitat. By having a penalty, what we're doing is saying we're not giving any of that money away, and we're just providing, an incentive to the hunter to give the data that's going to help maintain the herd. Is that a fair way of seeing that balance?
Sure, and I think that's applicable for many laws, right? I mean, we don't give incentives for people following almost any law that gets instituted. So I would say yes. In this case, we're collecting data that should help for better management and should lead to better hunting opportunities and a better understanding of the resource. And so I think your assessment there is accurate.
Okay. Are there any further questions right now for Taylor or Lieutenant Kieft? All right, next up, we have Justin Tomei from the Michigan United Conservation Clubs. If you'd like to come up, thank you both for your time and your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Justin Tomei. I'm the Policy Assistant for Michigan United Conservation Clubs, representing our 40,000 members and 200-member clubs today. In support of Senate Bill 52 as written. Taylor and Katie didn't leave a whole lot for me to say, so I'll be brief. Our board first passed an interim policy supporting decriminalization of harvest reporting after the regulation was passed last October. And That has since gone to our full membership at our convention in March. They passed supporting decriminalization unanimously. And, just to reiterate a couple of the key points that were said, that, NAREPA by itself automatically makes violation of any NRC order a misdemeanor. Then it's on the legislature to do this, and you guys have done it as recently as last year, where you decriminalized things like misidentifying your tree stand on public land, not putting your name on tip-ups when you're ice fishing, things like that. So, there's precedence for, these certain kind of non-egregious violations to just be decriminalized. We already do have reporting for other species. You report your bear, you report your elk, I believe some fur-bearing species, if I remember correctly. So this is not a new thing in the state of Michigan either. We did provide you with this stat sheet. This is the same one that we provided to your Senate colleagues when we testified in support of this bill then. And we hope that you will go ahead and move forward with this bill as written, and we can decriminalize this issue for Michigan hunters. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Justin? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have a couple of cards to read in. Taylor Ritterbusch from the DNR supports the bill. Justin Tomei from MUCC supports the bill. And not wishing to speak, but also supporting the bill, is Eric Schnell from the National Deer Association. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have House Bill 4159. We heard testimony on it last week, sponsored by Rep. Brixey. We do have a couple of cards to read in on that one as well. Not wishing to speak and supporting the bill is Rich Bowman from the Nature Conservancy. Not wishing to speak but also supporting the bill is Tim Minotis of the Sierra Club of Michigan. Now I would like to take up a motion to report the bill with recommendation. Representative McFall makes the motion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Bahutsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill,
Yes.
Shannon.
Yes.
Arvid.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Shriver.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 4159 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I appreciate it. Having no absent members to excuse and no further business before the committee stands adjourned.